Okay. He's probably out over there doing coffee and hanging out.
All right, folks, let's get started with Sunday school. If you could go ahead and get seated. You want it a little louder? I totally went off. Okay. Well, yep, are we getting better? Yes. We're getting louder, yes. That's good. My voice has been going in and out all week, so don't get allergies. My voice will be pretty good, and then I'll just sit for like a half hour and not say anything, and then all of a sudden it's just crackly. I mean, sounds like I got this terrible cold or something. Anyways, does anybody remember what we've been doing in Sunday school? Nope, not a clue. We're just in here having a good time. Drinking coffee and talking about shifts. Are we on the graveyard shift? What shift are we on here? Swing shift? Huh? I'm not sure we're quite on the fifth shift. Fourth shift. Yeah, fourth shift. I don't know, what do we call that? That's not the swing. That's not the graveyard. I don't know what shift that is. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So the fourth shift. This is where things start to get a little more interesting. All right. So do you know what the purpose of church is? Why are we here? Coffee. That's a good reason to go to church. Might wake you up a little bit. Yeah. Fellowship. I thought I heard another one out there. Make disciples. Yeah, make disciples. Does anybody know where we get that idea? The Bible. Yeah, somewhere in the Bible. That's a good spot to look. The Great Commission, and that is found in what gospel? Matthew. Yeah, it's actually found in a couple different ones, but the one that's the most specific is found in Matthew. Yeah. Matthew chapter 28. Verse 19, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded of you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. So we are to make disciples, baptize them, and teach them. All right, so we've been learning a little bit about disciple making in this. A little bit. Well, today we're going to go to the shift 4, as Trevor helped point out. Shift number 4. 5 minus 1, that's right. Yep. It's like that old radio show from many, many, many years ago, X minus 1. Did you ever listen to that? That's an old science fiction one. No? X minus 1. Yeah, 5 minus 1 gets us to 4. Okay, so number 4, like Darren and I were talking about this the other day, and this is where things start to get a little more interesting, and people get a little more excited, because we're going to talk about programs that the church puts on. Do we have programs? A few? Did we have one this week? Yeah. VBS, was anybody here involved in that? Yeah? Can anybody think of any other things we do as a church? All Saints Eve. Sunday school. Yeah? Any others? Just, man. Christmas. Christmas Eve program maybe or something, okay? Yeah, or maybe a choir group that practices and delivers special things for, okay. Yeah. Anything else? Missions, okay. Small groups, okay. Cove Camp, yeah, okay, so we support different things like missions. Cove Camp is a good one, yeah. So is there a reason why we do all these, or do they need to be tied together? I mean, can we just come up with great ideas all day long? I mean, maybe Dean has this wonderful idea to I don't know what your idea is, Dean. It's got to be something great, or you wouldn't come up with it. But no one knows. So Dean's got this great idea that nobody knows, but it's going to be completely awesome, right? Beyond awesome. And maybe Case has a great idea over here about how to energize high schoolers, right? Yeah? And, you know, Trevor's got this idea about shifts or something. I don't know. It's 5 minus 1. It's some kind of math course. Do they all fit together and go in the same direction? And that's what we're going to be talking about here in Shift 4, because churches can come up with great ideas, and people in churches have great ideas. Everybody does. Everybody's got great ideas. I remember when I first became an elder, and in fact, it was the whole time when I was an elder with Dave as the senior minister, and one of his complaints was people would come to him with these ideas. Hey, I had this great idea that the church needs to do. And Dave would say, hey, that doesn't sound like too bad of an idea. What are you going to do about it? Oh, no. I just come up with the idea. Somebody else has to do it. Now, I'm just the idea guy. No. We need more than people that just have ideas. I mean, everybody needs to have ideas, but we got to put those ideas into focus and get them going. But at the same time, not only do you have to get them going, you have to figure out which ones actually fit where the church needs to go to make disciples. And sometimes that means some programs have to be evaluated. In fact, all the programs have to be evaluated, but sometimes a program we might say, you know what, that's been a great program, but we don't see where we're getting any fruit, any disciples, anybody's growing at all. And maybe that program needs to hit the road. I mean, he talks about one here in the book where they would raise money on, was it a Mother's Day thing? Seemed like the church would just raise money on Mother's Day. And it was like, well, we're putting a lot of effort into having this kind of a dinner thing, and people come and donate money, but in the end, what was really the purpose of all this effort that was going into this program? We were just raising some money. We weren't even, trying to help people accomplish and make their life better, become more like Christ. And so that's where this next stage comes, because this is where things can get tricky. All of us might have this little thing that we really like to see the church accomplishing, but maybe sometimes that program needs to end, and we need to help put our effort into something else. Anyways, I'm going to turn it over to you, Darren. That's my job. I'm the introduction guy.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're cutting me, getting rid of me, and going to the big guy here.
Yeah. Cutting Kevin out, yeah. Nice.
I'll take that.
Okay. All right. The clicker is working. Perfect. All right. So, so if you got a paper, thank you for handing those out. Yellow or white doesn't matter. It was BBS yellow paper that I didn't know was in there, so I hit print, and all of a sudden that went through. So there you go. You're the lucky VBS people on that one. Before we get started today, Kevin's right. Kevin, this is Shift 4 and actually Shift 5. We've only talked theory up to this point. So the 3 shifts are theory in, here's an idea, here's some things that are important we got to be fleshing out. Now we're talking about rubber meeting the road. So we're going to get to that here in a second. But one of the things I want to mention, and at the elders meeting, they graciously, what's the word? I don't know. Harassed me. No, not. I made the comment last week that something to the effect of, we've never had a small group ministry here before, or something like that. And I wanted to clarify that statement because, one, I know that there are currently small groups that are happening, and I want to applaud you leaders who are in here that do that. I mean, that's great. That's really the vein of where we want to be going. And I also know they mentioned even 10 to 15 years ago there was like a concerted effort to, like, it was Rick Warren's book Purpose Driven Life, and there was sort of this concerted effort of making these groups, and people were assigned to groups and all that good stuff, right? So I didn't mean to say like there isn't or hasn't been ever a small group ministry. What I was trying to indicate is that we're talking about discipleship. and to having a ongoing, regular rhythm of small groups that's kind of vision-filled, pulpit-led, and would be a regular part of how we actually make disciples here at ECC. That's kind of a subtle shift in what we're talking about. So yes, it definitely is small groups and maybe piggybacking off of some of the foundation that has been laid, but also, again, sort of fine-tuning and evaluating, like Kevin mentioned, what we currently do and then moving forward from that place. So just wanted to begin there. In case that landed wrong in what I was mentioning, there you have it. So, all right, so in your papers, go ahead and get those out. We're just going to blow through this in just a few minutes, but a review. So if you're new today, you'll be caught up to speed a little bit. Shift 1, from reaching to making. And if you had that the paper, which again, if you've missed some classes, I have all the papers we've had. I do have copies, so if you want to come get those, you can. But basically, let's see here. You know what? I'll do this. If anyone doesn't have the pages, I'll just make these available. But we did a spiritual growth assessment, and we did the Enneagram, and it had the little pie chart we'll look at. So here, I'll get these if anybody needs them. Kevin will hand those out. Those are extras, yes. To get those. We're not going to touch on a lot. We will touch on that, but just so you have those, you can take them home and take a look at that. But we've been talking about this Enneagram scale, and that the whole idea between reaching and making is that we want to make disciples that even if they're at a -8, to grow them to a +5, or maybe to indicate that, as a +3, maybe we can go and reach a -2, right? There's this layer of process of making disciples. And so we got to look at that. We need to assess, where are we currently? Are we a +1? Are we a +3? Are we a +5? And then what is the expectation accordingly to that? And again, we unpacked that in the previous sessions. But basically, this is one of the ways that we evaluate. How are we doing at our home, in the church body, with our relationships with the world? And all of that begins to help us ask the question, am I growing in the image of Christ? Am I growing, and is, Colossians 1:28, which we've looked at as sort of our theme verse of being, growing and developing ourselves in Christ. And then we got to shift 2. So reaching to making. The next shift is informing to equipping. And we asked the question, what did Jesus do to grow people from, say, a -4 to a +5, right? And that was through what you guys actually identified in our session 2 was relationships. You guys got it right. So building relationships, avoid making people feel like a quote-unquote project because we genuinely want to care about them, and then have a plan to be able to do that. And so we talked about, this implementation of Matthew 4, where Jesus calls, Peter and Andrew, there's a follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. There's the head, heart, hands. And oftentimes we're really good at the head, we can move the heart, but if it doesn't actually get to the fingertips, right, then we're kind of missing this essential piece of growing and making disciples. And so we talked about the proof is in the testimony of, do you guys remember that phrase? The testimony of transformation. Yes. All right, so then move to shift 3, from program to purpose, and that's what we're going to jump into today. That had to do with methodology. We talked about like educational, attractional model, missional model, home model, and all of these in themselves kind of are an incomplete model. But we also identified what Jesus was saying is that through relationships, the relational model needs to be Bible-centered, intentionally directing people toward the goal of spiritual maturity, right? And this is part of the evaluation piece. If what we're doing is not promoting people to spiritual maturity, then that has to be something we evaluate. And then a place needs to be in an environment where people can honestly talk about their lives and work and work out what it means to follow Jesus. And so we use this chart to do that. And when we did the spiritual assessment, on the left there, you see the +4 and 5, the 3 and 4. Many of you identified yourself to be kind of in that young adult parent, sphere, in those categories. But you also identified that a lot of you know some -8s to +1s and 2s. You know some dead people in Christ. You know some infant people in Christ. So what we're talking about in this disciple shift is how do we get people, whether they're 3, 4s, and 5s, to be developing and maturing and helping others come along from a -8 to the plus 1s and 2s and 3s. So that becomes the goal. We want to be engaging this. And so here's where we're going to begin still in shift 3 with this question. Here's where I need some feedback, and I want some answers to this. And it's on your paper, so you can read it here, but I don't mean this to be like an antagonistic question. I want this to be just a genuine, like when you think about what we do at ECC, okay, here's the question. What do we actually equip our ECC congregation to do? So when you think about the programs that Kevin was listing off, what do we actually equip? Like when you leave on a Sunday morning or after whatever event was happening or whatever program that we've done, what do we actually equip people to do? Hopefully to invite other people. So we've equipped you to invite other people to church, okay? Oh, thank you for using the mics, just so we can get that in the recording for people that missed. So
I think it's as the author of the book points out, the American church in general does a pretty good job of having programs of self-edification for their members. In other words, we want to all be ready with an answer, and so we want to shore up our understanding of the Bible. We want to shore up our understanding of the nature of God, and the best way to do that is spend time in the Bible and learn about the nature of God. And then when those opportunities arise, we're ready, right? So we do a pretty good job of getting prepared. And I think that when it comes to equipping, that would be a category that I think most of our programs, if you will, really try to center on, is Bible knowledge and so on, and the life and story of Jesus. And ultimately, the formula for salvation, right? So I think where we, and most churches, start to hit the wall is to what extent are we equipping ourselves once we have this deeper understanding to take it to the next level, to make disciples that then can go and make disciples. And
is it something to this? Is that what you're kind of indicating? Is that what's that?
Did I get ahead of you too far?
No, I went backward.
Oh, you went backward?
Yeah, I went backward. No, this is great. I'm just asking, just for clarity's sake, you're saying sort of the wall becomes, if we've got the head part figured out, we're maybe, we're cultivating our hearts, but you're saying the hands level, like the practical?
I don't want to diminish or detract from what we do with our hands and feet in the name of Christ. It's just perhaps the focus or the goal is a little bit sometimes vague in terms of, what do we do now?
Right.
We have this information, we've been edified, if you will, we've been brought up, we've been shored up. Now where do we go? Mm-hmm. And so we shouldn't feel too bad about that. I think the American church in general struggles with this point. It's the point where that scary word evangelism, if some people are just built for that, and a lot of us are like, what? I have to go to you start getting all these ideas of what that might mean. You start thinking about going on the mission field or going knocking on doors or doing things, and it gets really spooky really fast, and so we hit the brakes a little bit. And here we've been edified for years, and we've done a good job. We're ready. We're more ready than we know, and so we equip ourselves to that point. It would be interesting to keep going.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Anything else? Any other answers to this question?
Thanks. Okay. I think going along with what Trevor just said, like, where do we go next? I work with the English Language Institute China. That's who I went to Mongolia with last summer. And they're really into this big push of like taking a step of radical obedience to the Father's call to reach the unreached. And so I think like with the equip that ECC does, we also have to search personally and like pray and feel the Lord's leading on our heart to take that step of radical obedience to where we need to go next, whether that's going to Mongolia or going somewhere else and serving the Lord and being his hands and feet where we are. Because one of the big things that we say at ELIC is you are equipped where you are to go and make disciples and be the hands and feet of Jesus wherever he calls you in radical obedience.
Nice. Wow, that's a lot. Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, and I think for me, I'll just speak from my own personal experience. I remember it's almost easier to spend the money and go to, I did some mission trips in Romania. It's almost easier to get our head wrapped around, okay, I'm going to go for 2 weeks, I'm going to do this missions work, and then I'm going to come home, right? And in the process, we met a shepherd, and we shared the gospel with him, and so there's this kind of thing. But then we come back to our friends, family, neighbors, who let their chickens run over in our yard, and the dogs poop in our yard, and, they have the wrong, rainbow flag, or, whatever it is, right? And they just irritate us. These are actually the people, I would argue, we're kind of called to reach, our neighbors. And so maybe part of this is like the beautiful part of ECC is this culture to go missions, to go into the world, right? We spend a large chunk of our budget every year on missions. That's awesome. Do we have that same enthusiasm for our neighbors? And I think this book specifically, though, again, discipleship can happen in a lot of those types of ways. Short-term mission trips, I know, has shaped my heart just for ministry in general. But when it comes to actually talking about sharing the gospel with other people that we actually know and speak English, we don't need a translator for, that can be actually maybe harder. And so I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know if that relates to anybody in here. See a hand?
Anyway, no, what I was going to say was last week when we talked about tangibly picking your one from VBS and how that goes. Well, quick little story time. We went to the park, Joseph Park, after one of our VBS days, and we're like, oh, look, fellow butterflies, because there was a family there that was in Saren's class, and we got to talking, and then we mentioned something about and then there's the school park at Enterprise, and we just live right down the street from it, and he was like, where do you live? And so we explained, and he was like, do you have a pool in your backyard, and you have one of those little swing sets? And he kind of described exactly our backyard, and I was like, yes. And he's like, we're your new neighbors.
Nice.
They live exactly right behind us, just across the creek. And so it was just kind of one of those really small worlds, but when you're praying for things, I guess, don't be surprised when they get answered.
Yeah.
If we're hey, who's the one? Who can you put in our life this week? And then it's I'll do you one better. We're going to put you right next to each other.
Love that, yeah.
So I think it's all that to say, it's that shift from program to purpose of it doesn't stay within these walls. When you accept that your life is something that you don't have a spiritual life and a personal life and this life, it's really kind of all mushed together. So that takes it from program to actual practicality. Anyway, that's all.
Almost like we're talking, oh wait, there it goes. Almost like we're talking about, it's holistic. Home, church, work, right, in the world. Let me share with you a short paragraph out of the book. On page 152, if you have your book, you can turn there. Here's kind of in a nutshell. When we ask this question about what are we equipped to do, all right, in this chapter, we want to take a closer look at the way we equip disciples to enter the world for the sake of the gospel. So we can kind of say evangelism, we can kind of say these other things, but and not that those are wrong in themselves, but I think I appreciate this holistic to equip disciples to enter the world for the sake of the gospel and lead people through the stages of discipleship, meaning we're going to take people from a -2 to a +3 in a process through steps. We want churches to make the shift from program to purpose, from activities that just draw crowds or impart information, to activities that take place in relational environments where discipleship occurs. So this is sort of begins to be this statement, this idea of it's less about a program and more holistically about kind of why are we gathering? What are we really trying to equip people to do? And I really appreciate that, to take the gospel into the world, and that world may involve our neighbors, right? Our coworkers, our other family, that type of thing. I was just thinking of one simple illustration, and I used school before, we'll use it again, right? If we go to college, and what are you going to college for? We ask the high school graduate, and they say, I'm going to be a sheep farmer. There's one over there, right? She wants to be a sheep farmer, I found out. You're right, we have, if you went to a college and they said, well, come to our college, we'll give you a 4-year degree. Well, what kind of degree? What do you offer? Well, I don't know, but you'll get something, right? Give us some money, we'll make sure you get a degree, good to go. That's not going to work. You're probably, I'm assuming, you're not going to go to that college, right? Because there's not a specific track in which you will get this required education so you can go do the thing that you want to go do. So it's about the head knowledge, it's about actually being able to apply what you're learning. So we know that from a school standpoint. But if the church is called to go make disciples, and we don't actually have a way of training up people to actually do that, then we're beginning to kind of miss the mark of Christ. We're beginning to miss the mission and what Jesus came for. And that's one of the reasons why we have the preaching team, for example. It's been fun to see Sean grow in his preaching. It's been fun to see Kevin take several at bats at that and do a great job for us. And there's a development. You guys actually only get to see what happens on Sunday morning. Meanwhile, I'm almost crucifying them. No, not really crucifying, but we do training, right, Kevin? And make them sweat a little bit and say, hey, we're going to grow in this. We're going to figure out not just how do we inform people, but challenge people, how do we apply this into our lives? And if you're a part of the preaching team, that's part of what we're doing, is sharpening each other so we can do that. I don't know if you've noticed, but the meditations, we do a meditation training now, and people who are going through that are now on the list. Pat did a fabulous job today. And I don't know about you, but holistically, I think over the last several months, we've had a lot more focused meditations that have brought us into kind of a good focused time of reflecting on Christ. So all of these things, right, that's one of the giftings that I feel like God has given me. Like the boys and Becky, they have to suffer through my coaching. I feel like I'm always coaching, right? There's something that, oh, hey, you could do this better or whatever, and it's like terrible for them, I know. But they love me anyway because it's Father's Day. At least one day a year, right? But this is what we're asking, right? Is this question of what do we actually do to equip people at ECC to do? And so that's what we're going to be talking about as we shift from program to purpose, okay? So in the book, it talks about this SCMD methodology. And they're describing this as Jesus's method, and there's a reason for that. The words are share, connect, minister, disciple. That's SCMD. So again, page 153, you can read that. And what I want to do is take some time. We're not going to go through this in grave detail. And here's why. Because later, either today and into next week, I really want you guys to be thinking, would any of you be willing to start one of these discipleship groups? Now, maybe some of you are already part of a small group, and maybe we can look to evaluate those and how can we implement the share, connect, minister, and disciple piece into your groups that are already forming. Maybe there's some new groups that need to be forming. I think we could stand to have several more groups getting started, and I think there's my vision would be maybe even this fall be launching some of these types of groups that are specifically focused around discipleship and being able to do that. And so the reason I want to just kind of skip over, I mean, we're going to talk about it, I'm going to give you the reasons, and then we're going to move on, is because I'd like to do a specific training for those of you who are willing to kind of get into this, and we can talk more specifically about these various steps of share, connect, minister, and disciple. But on page 150, let's see here, 153, there is, no, you know what, that's not the right quote. This is the quote. Yeah, it is. I guess it is on 153. Okay. So here's the SCMD. Jesus shared who he was through words and deeds. When people accepted his message, he invited them to connect, there's your C, with them in relationship. During that time of sharing life together, he taught them the truth about himself. As those disciples grew, Jesus trained them to minister to the lost and to other followers. Finally, after Jesus rose from the dead, he developed his followers to disciple others. So you get to see the SCMD methodology playing out in their description of what Jesus did. Now, what I want to do is highlight this. I'm going to read it again, looking at this maturity sphere, okay? If we look at how the SCMD applies now to an infant, child, young adult, parent, let's read this again. So Jesus shared who he was through words and deeds. When when people accepted his message, he invited them to connect with them in relationship. During that time of sharing life together, he taught them the truth about himself. As those disciples grew, Jesus trained them to minister to the lost and to his other followers. So you begin to see there's a shift now from not just sharing and connecting, but now once we get into this, sort of young adult phase, there is actual application being done now for what is the ministry. Finally, after Jesus rose from the dead, he developed his followers to disciple others. And so that's where we get into this releasing to disciple others. So that's kind of this heart of moving from program to purpose. There needs to be a purpose in how we are developing people from sort of this infant phase to child phase to young adult phase to then going and making more disciples as the parent, okay? Which is now we're getting into the fourth shift, okay? So shift 4, activity to relationship. So a big part of this, and this is what Kevin was alluding to earlier, alignment. How many of you have ever driven a car that's out of alignment? Right? Is Glenn in here? No? Well, Dean's in here. He's a car guy, right? Dean, I bet you've driven a car that's out of alignment. You probably can't go Mach 3 with a car that's out of alignment, can you? Just go with me, Dean. Come on, don't be difficult. I'm just kidding, Dean. I'm just kidding. Difficult is your spiritual gift. No, I'm kidding. Love you, brother. So alignment, right? We understand, if you've ever driven a car that's out of alignment, right, it is not very fun. So that's why we need this principle of alignment to play out. Page 173, it gives this sort of bullet points, and let's talk about them for a second. So this is what Kevin was mentioning. Each program must be evaluated to see if it is really producing what Jesus values. So the question becomes, what does Jesus value? Going and making disciples. He values this commitment, this growth, the spiritual process of becoming, Colossians 1:28, becoming more and more like the image of Jesus. So then the next level to this alignment piece is every program that has the potential to make disciples but isn't doing so must align itself with the overall goal of biblical relational discipleship. And which then leads us to the third point, that we do fewer things in the church and we do them well. And the definition of well is defined by our discipleship. Are we making disciples, right? That's the definition of well. Not attendance, right? Not even necessarily money. Those things begin to come when we have discipleship at the core. Okay, so thoughts on this? Ooh, Trevor's got another thought. Give him a mic.
Hello. Well, I just want to address that third one because, this is this concept of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. And this is in a vein of, when good people get together, they want to do good things. And in the church, we see this play out quite a bit. And so we may have a lot of things going on, but with very little fruit. And so as the eldership and other things, as we've kind of been talking about this program, one of the things that we're evaluating is, can we do better with fewer and be more productive, more fruitful with fewer, because we have limited resources, limited people, limited funds, if you will, limited time. And so anyway, I don't want to, when I see that initially, you think, oh, we're going to cut a bunch of programs and do fewer things, possibly, if this were to play out. And I think the focus would be, we want to do high-quality things that are in the vein of building relationships. And the other thing that's really cool is we have a perfect example in Jesus on how he was so effective in building disciples. And it is really that simple formula of relationships. And we see Jesus in relationship with the 12, of course, but then we also see Jesus in relationship with the 3 or 4. And interestingly enough, a lot of effective discipleship training occurred at that level of size. So I'm just going to kind of throw that out initially when we start talking about some of these life groups or discipleship groups that we'd like to roll out. I think the size is going to be really important as well. We want to stay at sizes that are effective, where relationships and living life together, so to speak, can be very genuine and more intimate, if you will, in the sense that you're going to be able to feel like you can talk. It's wonderful to get together in a large group like we do on Sundays, and we're encouraged by the Word to do so, and we do. But Jesus did that. He spoke to big groups. But there's just something different if you've ever been in a group of 8 or 10 or 6 or 8. And it just is a completely different opportunity to grow. And so, anyhow, this is probably the secret sauce is to building relationships is going to be smaller sizes. And as we look at things in the church that we're doing, maybe that's one of the directions we'll move towards.
Yeah. Something I'll just echo from the book on page 170. You can end up doing a lot of things not very well and become a mile wide and an inch deep. You must direct your people to things that make the biggest impact. There is also a difference between what you allow and encourage people to do on their organically, their own time, and what you back with your church's time and energy and resources. That's what Trevor's getting at, right? There is a limited amount. And even after a week of VBS, right, we've all spent a huge amount of effort to get that done. We're kind of like, whew, let's take a little break. That was good. We just got done, doing a big sprint. Now we can, we can't, that's not sustainable every day, all day, right? Unless we had just a lot more resources. We just can't do that. Since making disciples is the main reason why the church exists, everything in the corporate body of the local church needs to be aligned in a way that funnels people toward these discipleship environments, the most notable of which is the relational small group. All right, so that's kind of what we're getting at here, is that it's not like these are terrible ideas or whatever. I mean, we're not even talking anything specific. We're just talking in generalities. It's easy to come up with a lot of great ideas, but are they aligned in the church's specific purpose of making disciples? So, again, thoughts? Michael's smiling at me. What's cooking? What's cooking, Mike? You got any? Nothing? No thoughts? The high schoolers? Joel shaking his head. Yeah.
I just got one thought. I'm just thinking that we sort of know these principles outside the church and how they work.
Mm-hmm.
And we do them. I was thinking of just a couple of the Gordon Ramsay cooking shows, that have been on. He had one series where he would go into struggling restaurants. Usually they were mom-and-pop restaurants. He wasn't going to the big chains. And it always seemed to boil down to, you got too many things on the menu. You need to pare it down to what you do best. Your cooks are overwhelmed, trying to figure out all this stuff. It's like, let's focus on, the 10 or 20 things you do well. You don't need the hundreds, or so, and that's what he had to do to help turn them around, help them focus, and it usually always boiled down to, it's like, what was on your menu when you first opened your restaurant? The half dozen things you cooked really well, you know. And so we know these principles, you know, in other aspects of our lives, you know. And so it's seeing how do we work these out even in a church.
Right, yeah, no, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll just say this, in the book, and this, maybe this is just getting too honest, but I'm okay with being honest, because it's okay to not be okay, as we know. Right, but in the book it mentions this on page 173. He sort of warns the pastor that wants to begin to implement this. He says, for new church planners and pastors, it's easier to have the discussion before you start a program and then decide not to do it than to have to, quote unquote, kill a program that is loved by some influential people. Right? So welcome, to my job, right? I mean, and again, we're not talking about anything specific, but there is that reality that as we evaluate and as we talk through these things, this is the delicate balance that I get to walk, right? That you get to walk, because you get to be a part of this. That, one of the biggest, if I could do something over again at Singing Hills, one of the things that I would do over again is get more buy-in to our life group structure before implementing the new life group structure. What I realized was that I was getting undermined because of critical attitudes and sort of a stubborn, like, oh, the new guy's coming in to change everything. And there was all this turmoil that I was actually unaware of until it was too late. And then by the time there was damage control trying to be done, it was like, oh boy, what's going to happen next? And, that is where things get really hard in trying to lead people into maybe new waters, or waters that maybe have already been kind of lightly touched in, but we're talking about really making that shift into doing something different. So alignment is a difficult piece. So again, I'd love feedback. I'd love, are we kind of ready for anything like this? Am I still the new guy that can't touch sacred cows? Where am I on that realm? Where are we as a church family? One of the other things I'll just mention is, roughly 150 people in attendance, give or take, on any given week. There's roughly about 50 people that stay for Sunday school. Where are the other 100? I'm hungry. I didn't have breakfast yet. Where are the donuts? We need to have donuts and coffee. That would be alignment. Yes. Thus saith the Lord, donuts, right? But this is right. You guys get it. These are the tensions. And I want to be so gentle to this. I don't want to come in and be like, hey guys, right, this is what we're going to do. I need your permission. I need your participation. Because that's another thing I've learned in church ministry. There are a lot of people that will sit there and be like, great idea, Darren. You go get it. Go get it. I'll watch you. That's not ministry either. So, hands, yeah.
This gives me the opportunity to experience what you are sharing on a Sunday, on a Sunday basis. I think evangelism is many things. Is that better? I think evangelism is many things. When I went to Bible college years ago, it was evangelism explosion, and it meant you had to go out and cold call, knock on people's doors and frankly scare you to death. But, when you're in college, you do what you're told to do, and then you don't come away with a real good feeling about that or experience. But part of this church outreach for me, clear on the other side of Idaho, close to Montana, is every Sunday I get to worship and sing and appreciate, so many people who are part of this leading in worship. And I'm not a part of the Sunday school class, but I see really good things happening. And it encourages me in the area that we are. It's I'd say probably 96, 97% Mormon. And we have Mormon missionary come all the time. And what I learn here, helps me to invite them in and to have fellowship with them and talk about my faith. And hopefully, something is being done in our little tiny town. So don't discount, anything that you do. Prepare people to just speak, and be an example by the way you live your life and by what you say, things you do. I mean, you touch people in so many ways. And I just really appreciate that even though we could go to church and it's 100 miles round trip, this is becoming my church home. So thank goodness for internet, even though I can't stand it.
Well, we're sure glad you're here and in person. So, and thank you for saying that. Was there another hand? Oh, Trevor's just scratching his eyebrow, yeah, wiping the sweat off his forehead. So two things. We're talking about two things here in the alignment piece, right? You mentioned the one piece about evangelism, because that certainly is, because, again, it's not just about reaching the lost, but it's also about maturing those who already we have here. And so this is where it gets to be kind of a twofold element that, not to overcomplicate it, I mean, really it's about doing both of these things in a relational environment. But I'll just give you two examples. One I've already mentioned is the small group thinking about getting started this fall. I don't know if you want to just hang out afterwards. Let me know if you're interested in doing that, and I would love to sit down. We can do some training and talk through how do we want this to look. Okay, so that's one. The second one that actually is more of an urgent need is thinking about Sunday school. Okay, the truth is we have two incredibly committed, I mean, they're not the only two, but when you talk about children's Sunday school, right, Kurt and Heather have been shouldering the brunt of teaching those little cute kiddos for a long time. I don't know how many years. But we need to bolster that support. We shouldn't have that whole Sunday school hour wait on just two people. And so one of the things that we're talking about is, what do we do with it? Is it a valuable, viable ministry that is helping our kids grow closer to Jesus? And if we think it is, right, this is a real question I'm asking in this room. If we think it is, then we need to be supporting that ministry with real people to teach these kids. I asked the elders if I could do this, so I'll just do it now. In this group, you identified yourself as being 3, 4s, and 5s. Can I ask you, would anybody be willing to help Kurt and Heather teach these kids during the Sunday school hour so they can get a break? Now, I'm going to let that question sit for a moment, okay? I think where we really run into this is we have some options. One, maybe in this group we sort of plug the hole in the boat, stop the bleeding, so to speak, and somebody's willing to raise their hand. The other option, and this is what I posed to the elders, and there was mixed reviews on this, which is why I want to talk to you all about this, is what if we took the month of July and did recruiting, recharging, and relationships? Where we'd actually discontinue Sunday school for the month of July, which, by the way, the fourth Sunday is already one we don't do because of the rodeo. So there's like church up at the rodeo. So it'd be 3 Sundays in the month of July that we would focus on recruiting people specifically for children's ministry, but there's other ministries that I know need some support. That we would let people recharge, so our Sunday school teachers that currently do teaching, that we would let them get a break. We would focus on relationships, meaning that we would, do some level of, the elders were, talking about maybe we could serve up ice cream after church, so there would be a real relational thing where we could all be staying and, we could engage with other people and showcase a few ministries that we know want to be highlighted. For example, like we can highlight the Go teams, we can highlight children's ministry, we can highlight youth ministry. Some different places, areas in the church that we know we need more people, we want to be engaging more people. And so not just the 50 people in this room, but the 100 people that have left, I mean, we can engage everybody to that and being able to do that. If we don't do the month of July thing, For sure, I want to do a ministry fair in the fall because we, at some point, need to showcase our ministries and then make it clear what's the next step for people. I mean, that's a big part of what we're talking about. Okay, so at the very least, we're talking fall ministry fair idea. Possibly, if no one's willing to step up, this morning to say, hey, I'm willing to talk to Kurt and Heather, we'll figure out a good, healthy schedule, and we'll get some things worked out for the immediate, then I'm talking about, let's do something in July, and maybe we can rally some people. So, who's interested? Got 2 hands. Anyone else? I mean, that plugs the hole for the month of July, but we don't want them to get in that vicious cycle of now they're the only ones back there, right? And I know Kurt and Heather aren't done. They need a break, right? We want them to be healthy and in the community of other believers. Yeah? Yeah, yeah. Or the other side of it is, I mean, I know that I'm a fan of Sunday school. I think our kids are learning a lot by Kurt and Heather are doing a slam dunk job. But I also know that it's a ministry for us, because it's a time Rebecca and I can get a breather and a break, right? Doesn't mean that we can't be helping, but it is like a rhythm for that. I know Tyler really appreciates that. I know other, Summer and Chris, there we go. Our families that have kids, I think, are enjoying and are benefiting from that. So as a church, where do we want to land in making sure that we are a part of that? And I don't think taking a month in July I don't think that's a terrible idea. Frankly, one of the rhythms of Wallowa County is what I'm experiencing and getting to appreciate is you've made it through the winter, let's go enjoy the summer, yay, And so to give up a month of basically 3 Sunday schools is what we're talking about, isn't like the end of the world. I don't think it's like a major thing we'd have to restart. In fact, I could even see that Andy Stanley has a great talk on building momentum in just any organization, specifically in the church, talking about new, improved, and improving. And there's cycles to things. And so when you end something, you don't end it forever. You relaunch it, improved, and you get to build up some hype around it. Hey, we're launching Sunday school. I mean, when was the last time we even talked about launching Sunday school? Right? Maybe that's a piece to this, is we're just not giving it enough sort of communication. I don't know, I'm talking out loud at this point. I don't know if that's overly helpful, but these are the types of things where, as a church, we get to wrestle with, and we get to figure out how do we want to make it in a way that is both the viable ministry that we think it is, but also not burn people out and keep it healthy and strong for the future.
So if we were to take the month of July off, then could we do a both thing? So if we gave Kurt and Heather the month of July off, could we then do the ministry fair in the fall?
Yeah, totally.
So
we could. We can do any of it. In my mind, it's not like just because we plug a hole doesn't mean we don't do ministry fair. It's that there's the urgent need now, and then there's also the need of holistically and in the vision of the future, we want people to be plugging in these various areas. And so we want to be prioritizing and focusing that in the fall if we can get this one handled for the month of July. Okay. But, maybe we still take the month of July and we recruit the new help, and that's great too. So, yeah. Okay. We'll go Mom and then Trevor. Yeah.
When we excuse the kids for communion? Are we talking about when we excuse the kids for communion? Or are we talking about Sunday school teachers for the different grades for July?
Great question, and thank you for clarifying, because there is a difference, right? We have God's Country Kids that happens at our, right before communion, we dismiss the kids and then they all leave. So that's God's Country Kids, which, I don't know, Phil, you tell me, we probably could use a few more teachers in that too, Kurt and Heather, and yeah, Phil, right. So there's 3 in that one. And again, like I think that's sort of this rub is that there's the Kurt and Heather are both serving in God's Country Kids and in Sunday school, right? And so, I think doing one is fine. Doing both every week is tough.
Well, how many teachers do we need, and what are the grades? Like still first and second, third and fourth, and fifth and sixth, or what?
So I think there's, help me out, 2 groups, I think. Sean?
But Sunday school. Yeah.
Sunday school is divided into 2, so we have like the 4th and 5th graders, like Xavier, Winston, TJ, their age goes out. They're with Kurt right now, and Heather has everyone from 5 years old and up to like 3rd grade.
What about fifth and up?
So 4th and 5th are with
Oh,
Kurt right now.
and so then 6 is junior high, which,
Then they go to youth ministry where
oh, okay. So basically, you need 2 teachers to take over the lower group and one, and then the other one to take over the 3rd and 4th, 5th, or whatever. Okay, for the month of July. Is there material?
yes, we provide the curriculum. It's really easy stuff. You can just literally book you open, you can read through it. And we're not saying here, here's
Oh.
book 1. We're saying come along.
Right. Like it always was. They meet first and sing, and, okay, I'll do that for one of them.
For one of them, nice. All right. I think Diana just volunteered to take over the entire children's ministry. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, that's what we heard. Yeah. So one thing real quick to add on to this. I mean, and I know we want to be sensitive of the time. And so I would just say this. So the few hands that have identified themselves, I would just say, let's get a hold of Sean, and he can direct you to making sure that you know exactly what to do. And if any more of you are interested to help, just have a quick meeting with Sean. And even if we got to do a follow-up meeting, we have a couple weeks, right? There's 5 Sundays in June, so we have time. That's why I wanted to bring it up today, so that way we have enough buffer room to make sure that we can get this thing handled. So I'll kind of put a pin in that one for right now. Unless, yeah. Lisa?
For the Sunday school, ideally it'd be good to have a teacher plus a helper at each of those levels you talked about, not
Yeah.
just one person.
Teacher plus one. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so I just want to make sure I understand the alternative. So if we don't find people, we would not have children's Sunday school during July. And then, would we meet in here, with adults and might be kids in here and talk, what you said about, relationships and what were the 3 words you said?
Yeah, right. Recharge, refresh, and relationships.
Yeah,
Yep.
somehow laying
It'd be the
plans
month of
for
R&R.
August when we resume everything, or
Yeah, and then we look at the August of launching things again. Yeah, and I would say that again, this is sort of up for more conversation. But I've talked with Tim, I've talked with Michael as far as the other Sunday school teachers for adults. Part of what we're trying to talk about here is rubbing the 4s and 5s with 1s and 2s. And so part of this is if 4s and 5s, I'm just using this, now we have common terminology. If 4s and 5s are only hanging out in here while the 1s and 2s are out there having fellowship, we're still missing, right? We want people to rub shoulders together, be in relationship with each other. And that's a part of what we're asking is, how do we equip and grow each other in this way? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So, and then, sorry, Trevor. So, back to Trevor. Back to the big T.
Yeah, and we don't want to. We're not trying to shock. I mean, I just want to make sure, kind of. I don't want to speak for all the elders either, but I mean, we are definitely looking at biblical solutions to being current, nimble, and relevant. And rest is a biblical concept. Okay. And starting and stopping has huge advantages. Getting into a program and staying in it for 20 years has some advantages and some disadvantages in terms of being nimble, in terms of being able to read the room, if you will, when it comes to what's going to be effective. And what do we mean by effective? Are we effectively maturing people's faith and developing disciples that can then go and make disciples? It's a really simple, narrow objective that we're given. And so starting and stopping doesn't have to be scary, can actually be pretty exciting. It's sort of like a revelation that we have this ability, if we're willing to look into how to do this effectively, to bring small groups like life groups, maybe run for 10 weeks. This is just throwing this out there as an example. You have a build-up, you have a creation of groups, you run a 10-week program, you have a wind down. Then you have a rest for a short, maybe a month. Then a wind up and go again. And you have this opportunity to get the word out. You have this opportunity to talk about what's being done. Those small groups maybe have a finale. Maybe there's a big community activity at the end that the groups kind of in sync participate in, or something of this nature. When you have this sort of built in, baked into the system that we're okay to start and stop, we have a lot of potential there. So I just want to kind of throw that out, and we're not saying that's exactly what we're going to do. We're talking about this concept at the leadership level as something we could do to refresh and improve, and improving, have that sort of concept going all the time.
Right. Phil?
Okay, so didn't somebody else volunteer to teach? Okay, so you need 2 teachers for July.
Yep.
And when does Sunday school start? 10:30?
Mm-hmm.
When is it over?
11:30.
11:30. First you sing, then you teach material that's there. Okay, if Kaylee and I teach, then maybe there's a couple of people that would assist us. Just, what is it, 3 Sundays?
Right, for the month of July, yep.
In July,
Mhm.
okay. So we're looking now for 2 assistants.
Right. We got a hand. We got a hand to help. All right, sweet, thank you. Phil? I think Becky had already raised her hand as well. Yeah. Thank you guys for stepping up to do that.
So having been involved in children's a lot in the past and currently, in children's church, I see it working with this rotation of a different teacher every week. But in Sunday school, I think some kind of conformity from week to week, that same teacher has the same disciplinary habits, the same, so the kids come in expecting something, and it's the same every week, that consistency. So I think this stop-start thing might be a great thing. So a teacher with a helper takes this class for 10 weeks, and they roll with this class for 10 weeks. Then there's this break. After that 10 weeks, maybe that helper steps up to the leadership role, and a new helper comes in, and they take it another 10 weeks. And I can see that cycle working. But if I just see, oh, we have 10 volunteers, you take week 1, you take I don't see that working. So I think maybe we take July, the people interested in wanting to see Sunday school evolve, get together and plan how this cycle's going to fit together. I can see that making a lot of sense.
Yeah, sure. You mean having a plan? Wait a second. Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
All my kids went to Sunday school from the time they were little. And it was the old style where you do have a teacher that's in there. You know, it was the old school Sunday school. I think recently, being involved in Sunday school for years as a teacher and a superintendent at a couple churches, I think the rotation is, you can't have a quick rotation, but you can have 2 teachers that rotate. The kids get used to both of them, like not every week, but say quarters. Like what? It's, 3 months, and then you rotate again. So rotation really works. I agree with Phil. But
Yeah.
longer rotations.
Yeah, interesting.
But the fact that we just have 2 Sunday school classes, and then the nursery, of course.
Right.
And then junior church, I think is really a good plan for the future. We aren't broken up all over.
Yeah.
With first grade, second grade, third grade, the way it used to be.
Well, and what I love about this conversation is, one, it does several things. One, it all makes us aware of the need, right? So we can all be, okay, maybe, for a lot of people, and I would argue that maybe even some that, don't see for Sunday school, that would be willing to help. They're just unaware that there is that specific need. Maybe they don't have kids in that age bracket that are in Sunday school, and if they don't have kids in Sunday school, then why would they even really know that there's the specific need? So we've accomplished lots of things here this morning. One is we're talking about alignment, and does the children's Sunday school align with the mission of making disciples, okay? And I think what I'm hearing is you guys are seeing that that's the reality, and so we're willing to pony up to say, okay, let's make that happen. Let's keep it healthy. And we're going to talk more next week about these 5 components. I'll go ahead and just share this, right? The clear goal of discipleship and breaking these things down. We're going to start there next week. But I appreciate your guys' willingness to just engage this conversation. These aren't necessarily easy conversations. And, I just hope you can see that we're all in this together, right? Like, we want to be a church family pulling in a healthy direction. And so what I would like to do is close our time in prayer. If you are willing to engage, so the people that have raised your hand, talk with Sean real quick. And if anyone else maybe was sort of quietly thinking maybe they'd be interested to just know more, go talk to Sean, be part of that group. And what I would like to do is convene with the elders. Like we have a meeting on the 20th, and we'll discuss what we just heard this morning, and then kind of implementing that idea. If we end up doing that where we cancel it during the month of July, this group will be the most impacted by that because you guys are the ones who come to Sunday school, right? And so I think we can even do it sort of as a short notice. Let's see, the 30th is June. Let's see, June 30th is the potluck Sunday, so in 2 weeks. And so we should know by next Sunday kind of the game plan, and then we can begin to even talk through beyond that the methods in which the rotation could happen to keep things healthy. Now that's methods at that point. So does this sound good? All right. Let's pray. God in heaven, thank you so much for your love and grace. Thank you for being able to have this conversation and just highlighting the faithfulness of Kurt and Heather and just their willingness to continually, regularly give of themselves to help disciple and raise up the next generation. Thank you for their willingness to engage both with VBS and so many here that participated in the registration and the cooking and the teaching and the games. God, you are so good to bring all of us together and unify in that. God, I pray that you would continue to raise up more and more people that are committed to discipleship, that we would continue to raise up more of the lost, that we would come to know you and we would see these baptismal waters stirred in such a real and authentic way where people would be transformed like we saw from Matthew. God, that you're not done doing transformative work, and so you're calling on the church to be about your business. So I pray, God, that we would be open to that and be really focused in on that. Lord, I pray for those that are maybe in the infant child phase of their walk with you. God, I pray that your Holy Spirit would stir all of us, both to help them come along in their maturity, and they themselves would be open to being taught and growing and wrestling with these things that are so near and dear to why you came in the first place. So God, thank you for this congregation. Thank you for the love and support that they've shown. And I pray, God, that you would be honored as we move forward together. And so we thank you. We pray that in Jesus' holy and perfect name. Amen. All right. God bless you guys. Hey, have a great Father's Day.